Liberalism is a political ideology that emphasizes individual freedom, equality, and democracy. It is based on the belief that every person has inherent rights and should be free to think, speak, and live according to their own choices, as long as it does not harm others. Liberalism supports the rule of law, meaning everyone is equal before the law, and it promotes a government that is accountable to the people through democratic elections. Traditionally, liberalism also favored a free market economy, where businesses and individuals could operate with minimal government interference. Conservatism is a political ideology that values tradition, social stability, and continuity. It emphasizes the importance of preserving established institutions, cultural norms, and moral values that have developed over time. Conservatives generally believe that change should be gradual and cautious, rather than radical or revolutionary, to avoid disrupting the social order. They tend to support a strong sense of national identity, law and order, and often prioritize the role of family, religion, and community in maintaining social cohesion. Socialism is a political and economic ideology that advocates for collective or governmental ownership and control of the means of production, distribution, and exchange, rather than leaving them in private hands. It is based on the belief that wealth and resources should be distributed more equally to reduce social and economic inequalities. Socialists argue that capitalism leads to exploitation and concentrates wealth and power in the hands of a few, while leaving many in poverty. Communism is a political and economic ideology that seeks to create a classless, stateless society in which all property and means of production are owned collectively, and wealth is distributed according to need. It is based on the ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who argued that history is driven by class struggle between the working class and the owning class. In a communist system, capitalism is seen as inherently exploitative, and the goal is to overthrow it through revolution, replacing it with a system where there is no private ownership, no social classes, and no economic inequality. In theory, communism envisions a society without money, government, or hierarchy, where people work together voluntarily for the common good. Capitalism is an economic and political system in which the means of production, such as factories, businesses, and resources, are privately owned and operated for profit. It is driven by the principles of a free market, where supply and demand determine prices, production, and distribution of goods and services. In a capitalist society, individuals and businesses have the freedom to compete, invest, trade, and accumulate wealth, with minimal interference from the government. Fascism is an authoritarian and nationalistic political ideology that emphasizes strong centralized power, often led by a dictator, with strict control over society and the economy. It rejects democracy, individual freedoms, and political opposition, promoting intense nationalism, militarism, and the belief that the state is more important than the individual. Fascist regimes often use propaganda, censorship, and violence to maintain control and unify the nation under a single ideology. Anarchism is a political ideology that rejects all forms of hierarchical authority, especially the state, and advocates for a society based on voluntary cooperation, mutual aid, and self-governance. Anarchists believe that people can organize themselves without governments, laws, or coercive institutions, and that true freedom comes from the absence of imposed power. While often misunderstood as chaos or disorder, anarchism actually promotes order through free and equal associations, aiming to create a society built on justice, equality, and individual liberty. Nationalism is a political ideology centered around the belief that a nation, defined by shared culture, language, history, or ethnicity, should have its own independent state and political sovereignty. Theocracy is a political system in which religious leaders or institutions hold governing power, and the laws of the state are based on religious doctrine. In a theocracy, there is little or no separation between religion and government, and religious authority is considered supreme. Leaders often claim to rule on behalf of a divine power, and citizens are expected to follow religious laws as both moral and legal obligations. Examples of theocracies include historical states like the Papal States, and modern ones like Iran. Authoritarianism is a political system in which power is concentrated in the hands of a single ruler or a small group, with limited political freedoms and little tolerance for opposition. In authoritarian regimes, the government controls many aspects of life, including the media, the legal system, and sometimes even personal behavior. Elections, if they exist, are often manipulated, and dissent is usually suppressed through censorship, intimidation, or violence. Totalitarianism is an extreme form of authoritarianism where the state seeks to control every aspect of public and private life. In a totalitarian regime, a single party, often led by a dictator, rules without opposition, using propaganda, mass surveillance, censorship, and state terror to maintain absolute power. There is no political freedom, and even personal beliefs, education, culture, and family life are regulated to align with the ruling ideology. Populism is a political approach that claims to represent the interests of ordinary people against a perceived corrupt or out-of-touch elite. Populist leaders often present themselves as the voice of the common people and frame politics as a battle between the virtuous majority and a selfish elite. Environmentalism is a political and social ideology focused on protecting the natural environment and promoting sustainable living. It emphasizes the need to preserve ecosystems, reduce pollution, combat climate change, and use natural resources responsibly. Environmentalists advocate for policies that support renewable energy, conservation, wildlife protection, and reduced human impact on the planet. Progressivism is a political ideology that advocates for social reform, justice, and forward-thinking policies to improve society. It emphasizes the need to address inequality, expand civil rights, and adapt laws and institutions to meet the needs of a changing world. Progressives often support government action to reduce poverty, improve education and healthcare, protect the environment, and promote fairness and inclusion, rooted in the belief that society can and should progress. Centrism is a political ideology that advocates for a balanced and moderate approach, avoiding the extremes of the left and right. Centrists believe in practical, flexible solutions based on reason and compromise rather than strict ideology. They often support elements from both conservative and liberal positions, aiming to promote social harmony, political stability, and economic pragmatism. Monarchism is a political ideology that supports a monarchical form of government, where a king, queen, or emperor serves as the head of state. Monarchists believe in the legitimacy of hereditary rule, often viewing the monarch as a unifying symbol of national identity, tradition, and stability. Monarchies can be absolute, where the monarch has unchecked power, or constitutional, where the monarch's role is mostly ceremonial and actual governance is carried out by elected officials.